Alright guys, today we're going to be working on the undercut, kind of a finished shape here. We're going to take that bottom out. Now you can take it all the way through, I kind of blend it out. I'll show you how I do that today. Really kind of working visually on this haircut more than anything. Now we're starting to get into those haircuts where you can do them technically, but you really have to rely on the eye. So this is where we're going to start to develop that. And really you can start to see how many other haircuts come off of this if you just added a little length, took away length in some other areas. There's a million different ways to undercut a haircut. This is just how I'm going to show you to go about it. I'm not saying it's the right way, the wrong way, or the only way. I'm just showing you how you can approach this and think about this in a different way. Don't take anything more or less from that. This is really about developing the eye. Nothing else matters. Guys, today we're going to talk about the undercut. The undercut is, it's one of those interesting haircuts in the salon that like works really well on some people and can be quite a beautiful haircut. But the grow out of it is just fucking brutal sometimes. So you have to be really careful with the idea that, you just can't go, well you can go as short as you want. Like this is a haircut that if it suits the guest, you really have to figure out what suits the guest, right? And if it suits the guest, go as short as what makes sense for the style and the shape and reading their lifestyle that makes sense for the haircut, right? So a big part of that is just kind of getting a good feel for what they're gonna be able to do with the grow out phase. I'm not like a huge fan of doing this on someone that comes in for the first time. I like to get to know them a little bit and see if they'll be able to take a shape like this. But I try to do something in the salon that's a progressive version. Something that's like far more wearable for the guest. So I'll show you a couple little things that I'm thinking about when I do it. Obviously most people do this with the perspective that they kind of follow the parietal ridge around the haircut. And they're going to do some sort of thing, like whether that be like a square shoe or a horseshoe, or you know, kind of dropping it down into like more of a mullet shape, but getting rid of the square and you can go down and kind of follow that. You can bring this all the way down and then come back out behind the ear or something crazy and get like a mohawk shape on it. It's a pretty cool, versatile haircut. It's good to show the undercut because you can do so much with it, even like doing it, you know, somewhat asymmetric and having that line come out at the back right corner, like kind of cross behind the head under the occipital bone and then flare out to that right corner is a fun haircut I've done in the past. You really have to figure out what you're going for and what the shape is. But most of the time, that's kind of where we live, is kind of in this shape where we section off the top and the bottom of the head, kind of much higher than the occipital bone, and just basically just incorporating all of your crown into that. And that also, like if we were taking a look at this, it basically has your back layers and your front layers and then slowly goes into the bang, right? So really that's the only hair that's not one of those sections is this little triangle section here in between the bang and the weak side layers here on this particular shape. So just that little triangle of weight is what's really going to be down here on the sides on them. So you can get rid of that triangle, you can get up into that hairline and curve out. I've done this haircut. If you're just looking at, just think about the weight of, I've come up into that, and I'm just kind of hitting kind of mid to top of the recession there, and sometimes I can hit to the bottom. It just really depends on how much weight they have in their recession, is like how much of it you can borrow for the top of this shape. So there's just a couple things to think about. It's super advanced sectioning, so you're really kind of like sectioning it out and then pulling it down and holding it in your hands to see how much weight you will have to play with once you undercut. So if I pull it down and I don't have enough weight, maybe I'll drop this line a little lower and that will give me a little more weight on top, right? Easy stuff to think about, but like just having to visually look at it, right? Don't guess, like take that sectioning pattern, look at how much hair you have, look at it all dry. Something that I'll show you today, and this is something that I use far more frequently in the salon, is as I transition through, I come out and I'll come out either to that front this would be like, let's say their sideburn is kind of coming out there. I might come to here, I might kind of come mid sideburn, I might come all the way to the front. So what you're seeing here is I'm gonna give myself some weight in this area to kind of hide the fact that it's like shaved underneath, like so aggressively disconnected. So I'm gonna give them a chance to wear like their hair almost normal, but it will be disconnected and will be edgy and funky. So it's a good technique to have, and I'll show you that pattern. It really depends on their density, their texture, and you really have to make a decision about where you're dropping that line to. But that's kind of what I'm gonna show you today. And then also, I'm gonna do what I would normally do in the salon, because the grow out of that short, if they try to grow it out, the grow out is brutal. So what I tend to do is I tend to razor this off pretty short. So I'll take the razor and I'll show you that today. You can do it with point cutting, you can do it with scissor over comb, obviously, and then you can get into clipper over comb or clippers with guards. Whatever you want to do. I've seen people shave this off entirely. It really depends on what you're going for with the shape. So just take all of that into account. This is where that artistic eye is far superior than any of the technical shapes I can draw up here. I mean, basically these are just verticals, and then I might get into a slight diagonal forward as I transition through from the back to the front, meaning that I'm gonna be pretty straight up and down through the back. And then as I come to the front, I might diagonal forward slightly just to give a little more connect, like give me the opportunity that if I wanted to invert one of these sections back, I could do that and get me a little more weight towards the front if I wanted it. Now, I'm drawing it pretty low. It might be higher than that. So you just have to really figure out what you're going for, and so on and so forth. And you might dip this line out like to there and just give you a little bit of weight there. So, you know, who knows what I'll do on the mannequin today, so because the haircut has to be cut off of what the existing hair is. But we'll get into that and we'll make some decisions, and you'll be able to see where I might like change my mind and so on and so forth. A couple quick notes while I'm sectioning this out. This haircut takes two things, one of two things. It takes confidence on both your part as a hairstylist and on the client's part to wear the haircut. Okay, so you just can't come and drop any cut you want on people. They have to be confident enough to wear it. So on this mannequin, because just because I feel like choosing to, I'm gonna section out this part and get the whole sideburn in the side of this, and then kind of wrap around the head and just basically leaving out what would be my layers normally. Couple of clips in there. Just keep turning that around so you can see it. And then on this side I might be a little lower because there's less hair over here. So I might even, depending on, like, this is interesting, but people's ears can stick quite a bit further on one side than the other. So you might have to adjust how far you put the section forward based on their ears. All right, so that's my section pattern. One side to the other. And that's just high enough to get me a really breezy, I'm gonna bring this forward just a touch. A nice little undercut here. This might be like, obviously you can just transition this forward and you'd have like a really visual undercut, but there's something to having that ledge that I find somewhat unattractive. So I usually bring it out and then I'll piece this out to make it piecey around the ears, and then you can like edge it off and do whatever. But having that meat to work with at the beginning really makes a world of difference. I'm going to show you this angle. Pushing the head down slightly makes it a little easier to get in here. So nothing uncomfortable for them, but just slightly. So just going to grab that hair and then basically visually, and I'm just going to edge that down. And that's exactly how I would do it in the salon. Just taking that hair and getting it as close as I can without going crazy, of course. Putting a little bit of a ledge at the top that we can soften off later if we don't want it. But just starting at the same point. And it's still blended, but the same point. Just walking that shape down. Notice I kind of hold my head off to the left side so I can see my shape as I'm working it down. Just keep moving that section. And it makes zero difference if you do this with a razor or a pair of scissors. I do it with a razor just basically to save time because I'm just trying to remove the hair as quickly as possible. And visually, I like it to be really kind of piecey and messy. The haircut is piecey and messy overall, so I just kind of going with that a little bit. And I want to be careful not to invert this, so just kind of working it right out of shapefall there. And then I'm going into a slight diagonal forward now. I want you guys to get into the habit of not stressing too much about how perfect you are. You gotta let the hair, like I'm being careful not to move these together, but you gotta sit back a little bit and see what you want. Because right here I might make a decision to go really tight around the ears, or I might make the decision to keep it a little looser and longer as I come to the bottom, just to make sure it all blends in with that. Or, which is more likely the case for me, is I'm gonna come and leave a little bit around the ears that makes sense, but I may do it knowing full well that I'm gonna take it off later in the haircut. So, just a little bit of the decision making that's happening. I'm way out of body position to show you guys on the camera. And I'm not too, I just kind of want to show you how to cut this. I'm not so overly worried about what this looks like because the mannequin, the hair kind of pops off in the mannequin head in a way that doesn't really happen on real people. So it's really kind of an interesting haircut, and as you get on short haircuts on mannequins, this is why it's always better to cut these things on real people. But one, we're in the time of COVID, and then two, you know, these are just techniques and they're not necessarily haircuts. So I want to show you how to approach it, but I don't necessarily, this isn't something I would just necessarily just slam on someone. So me just clean this up. When I took my clip out, and it doesn't matter how clean it is, it really doesn't. You just want to get that kind of shape in there. I'd rather you be sitting back from the haircut and the hair here not be the same length as the hair here, but the shape makes sense. So that's what people lose sight of. It's the lengths side by side don't make the haircut. It really is what the shape ends up being. So if you follow it almost perfectly where the eye can't tell that you're getting longer, you could still have a really butchered haircut even if you were following the lines perfectly, but it's all because you didn't step back and look at the shape you were cutting, right? Like, to me, that's the biggest sin you could ever commit as a hairdresser. You know, if I would cut the hairline, if anything was getting crazy right now that they might be able to see, like, I know I'm going to go back in and dry and touch all this stuff up, really like kind of scissor over comb into this hair and really texture through it to blend it when it's dry. But I want to make sure that there's nothing strange here that they're going to be like sitting there worried about. That's it. So you're just taking that section. Now it's just kind of blending out the rest of that into it. The most important thing you need to know about doing an undercut is, at this point, it becomes hyper visual. So it really depends on the shape I'm going to end up putting on here. So that's why I can't really tell you I'm going to go through with a certain pattern, because what I really do is kind of follow what the shape I'm working on is. So I might first kind of come in and on this person and kind of take some sort of horizontal section here and like just start by removing some weight, right? My other options would be to give myself a little more hair here and start to come in first and just remove some of that texture and then slice off that way until I get the shape I want, right? So you really have to figure out what's best for that shape. So that's what I'm gonna do here. It's gonna come in, and really I'm more worried about how much weight and texture I want to leave on and how much I want to kind of blend over the side here on this particular cut. So now I'm going all the way down into that sideburn area, just really kind of breaking that up and getting that nice separation in there. And just really making sure that flows down where I want it. This section slightly inverted. They're mostly going to be wearing these haircuts back away from their face, right? So you just want to get that in there, get that texture, get that off of the head, and then visually start to melt off your shape. Boom. And here, most of the time, they're going to be kicking this back behind their ear, giving it this like nice little texture there in the front. Pretty awesome. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll kind of come here on this side and just slightly forward grab that out a touch. Nothing that will round it or do anything strange towards the face, but it'll slightly give this feeling of being pushed back at all times. So just a little detail there that I'm thinking about on that front piece. And just really getting in there and detailing it and watching it. And then when I come to the side, what's this hair gonna do? If it pushes back, I'm gonna push it back a bunch of times to see what that's gonna do. And then you can see like that undercut's in there. I'm just kind of blended now. Instead of seeing this like skin tight fade and then that, it gives it like a much more wearable everyday look, but gives you that coolness of pieces and texture popping over the weight lines of the parietal ridge and then over and around the exterior line that just make it such a cool haircut. and just following what I was doing before. And first things first, I want to get that weight out and then get kind of my layering in there that I want. And I'm making a decision on how I'm going to cut each one once I get there. Because as I transition around the head, I'm going to have less hair in areas. So I want to be careful not to just follow guides. I want to follow what I'm trying to achieve. So I know the next haircut on her is going to be some sort of flick where I asymmetric this weak side into the strong side. So what I'm going to do is kind of cut that in mind, kind of the same way I would with a guess, right? If I knew that I was moving a haircut somewhere, I would be having that haircut in mind as I came through. Being really careful with my layering to not hit the same spots, right? I don't want to put any artificial weight lines in there. That the whole reason of picking up a razor is you're not getting those weight lines. So I'm actually cutting over top. This is not how I cut this. I would probably be cutting this hair from the back, but it allows you to see it a little easier. And then just slowly getting into this hair. And see, I'm inverting ever so slightly to shape fall because it makes no sense to cut the hair outside of where it's going to fall at this point, right? I want to make sure that the hair is going to do what I want it to do there. So I'm basically cutting it as close to that as I possibly can. There makes no sense to cut this way down here if you're going to wear it back. So if I was going to wear it forward, you would see me probably taking more diagonal back sections, pulling that forward to the face, and really edging it to what I want it to do around the face. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is coming back away from the face. So that's the kind of cutting we need to do. Like, this is why you can't follow guides and sections, and why you can't just memorize haircuts. Because I could take the same haircut and want it to style 2 or 3 different ways and have to cut it 2 or 3 different ways. I'm just going to edge off here. This is super heavy right here around the face, but because it's the weak side and there's far less weight over here, I'm just going to put some negative space in. And I'm going to leave some of that weight because I want it to kind of balance out with the other side. And then I could make a decision to just layer off just a touch here on that corner so it doesn't get into any weird points. And then obviously she would have some of that tucked back behind the ear. All right, so on this particular haircut, with the top, I'm just gonna kind of come through and follow the shape of where it's already wearing. So this side's cut. I'm not gonna go in and cut that side, but I'm going to come off exactly how this hair is moving from the part over, and I'm going to just take out weight so you don't have a lopsided heavy mess. I'm kind of just balancing it out right now. And what this is going to do is going to give that texture that's going to match the rest of what's going on. And notice that I'm really careful to not hit here, and I really don't want to hit there either because I don't want to take away my undercut. I don't want those pieces to get shorter that are falling over the length. So just adding a little texture inside of both of those points. And on this haircut, that is the focal point. The bits hanging over the side are the focal point. So that's the most important thing. So typically speaking, I'm going to do all of that touch up dry. And visually cut the bejesus out of it at that point. So a lot of times in the salon, this hair is much longer, so we get the real draped over. And you can do that, it's a cool haircut, up to you. Our next haircut, we're gonna go into asymmetric, and then I'm basically gonna leave this flick over, kind of like an 80s flick, which is, I think, something that's going to be huge here again soon. I've been saying that for about 5 years, so we'll see. But just piecing this off so you get like this asymmetric feeling out of this haircut is going to be cool with the next haircut. And then last thing to do is just visually decide where you want that length to hit and how piecey you want it. So I just visually do it. I just sit back and figure out what I like, what I don't like. Pretty simple. What I don't really like and what I'm often like very wary of is like these bits here getting too heavy down into that corner and kind of making it feel like a rat tail on top of the undercut. So just something I check on. I'm gonna blow her off now and then we'll do some finish cutting. Picked up my scissors now and I'm gonna get into the visual cut. So most of the time I'm trying to do is kind of get like good separation right here over the ears. Try to break it up. One, I don't want to cut, like be careful, I don't want to cut into that front hairline and do some sort of forward graduation there. I'm just trying to get some negative space into the length so that hair can move a little bit, right? I want that hair to kind of brush back and be like nice around the ears. And then really this is going to be the biggest focal point of your visual cut, is getting that weight to loosen up right there in that heavy section. So what I'm going to do to address that, I'll turn it so you can see it here, is kind of go about an inch inside the hairline in a halo sectioning pattern, right? And what that's going to do is going to drop out all of my exterior line first, and then I can attack that on its own, whether that be through slicing. And I'm going to aim for areas that are already thinner. I'm not trying to thin the hair out. So I'm going to aim for areas already thinner, and then here I'm just visually going to start to go in there, and I'm not necessarily carving, I'm kind of just slicing down through that. And just giving it kind of a diagonal. What I'm saying is a diagonal push over, as opposed to carving where I would come in all the way sideways and all I'm trying to do is give negative space and separation to it. If I'm coming in kind of on an angle, I'm kind of making that hair push that way on an angle. If I'm coming in from the side, I'm just carving out negative space. All I'm really doing is giving separation. And then just a little blend through there. And just let that stuff do its thing. Let it have fun. Now I don't want to cut too much off because, like I said, I have this other haircut to be considering. I can keep doing. I don't really like that. Like if I just did another halo, all this hair is kind of sitting on top of itself. So what I'm going to do is switch to a little diagonal back here, and that's going to give me the hair kind of falling at a length that I want. Typically when I do this haircut, there's just a touch more weight coming through, but that's okay. It's fun to do it a different way. Just really, now I'm going to tip point some of this because I just want to melt it. I want to take that length away. Tip slice rather. Same thing. Slice up through, tip slice a little bit here. Boom. And just see how, like, you know, dry cutting is just basically the bitters of the hairdressing world. Just helps everything blend together. Like, I'm leaning heavily on that first cut. I'm leaning heavily on it, right? But I have no clue where that hair was, what it was going to do after it dried. I have a good guess, but now I don't have to guess anymore. I visually see it. I cut that stuff exactly where I want it. Simple. And this side doesn't need as much. Little weight right there. Right? Doesn't need as much. And on a real person, a really nice blend. We get that pop from the back. It comes over, so it gives a shape to the occipital bone, right? Instead of having it like so disconnected that it no longer makes sense with the shape. But I love having just a little bit of hair underneath so it doesn't look like a wig sitting on top of their head. I love that in the front where it can tuck back, and on a real person, because it lays so much flatter, it's so much prettier. Just a beautiful haircut overall. I really like it when I get a chance to put it on a guest, but it has to be a guest that is confident enough to wear it, and they'll wear it a couple times before they start to grow it out, just how it goes. Using this matte fiber, it's a fiber-based pomade. Real nice hold. Not gonna be too gummy. It's not gonna be too sticky. Just like a really nice in between. It's gonna give us that a touch of a matte feel, but a little nice separation. So I'm gonna work that through the back first, kind of then start to work it up into the front. And when you're doing this, once you get most of it off your hand, you can be far more aggressive getting it in to the front and really getting it in and letting the product start to do its thing. As you can see, it'll really start to pop up here. And once I kind of do that, then it's just literally working it to where I want to see quickly the shape go. And then also the guests will know like how easy it is for them to kind of get that style in once they start to do it at home. Well, I'm liking how that's like kind of sweeping across. So normally it's long here, so this is pretty cool. I like this. And then I want to make sure I have that balance, which is kind of hard with no mirror. That's why the mirror is the most important tool in the salon. And then just visually speaking, making sure that's doing exactly what I want it to do. And then take what's left of the product and just touch the bottom. That's my finished shape of the undercut. Beautiful haircut, really hard to do on mannequins. It's gonna be much easier to do in person when you get to play with real beautiful textures and densities. You'll find that the world is your oyster with that. It's gonna do a lot of different shapes. You're gonna get a lot of different textures, really fun. I'm a big fan of having it not be just a straight haircut, but that there's texture and movement in it and some weight in the front. And I really like this haircut day to day. It's a beautiful haircut to grow out. Everyone is kind of blown away in public when the guest is walking around. It's a really difficult haircut to control, so if you learn how to control it, you can do so much other stuff off of this. Just think of all of the things that you can do with disconnections like that. Beautiful haircut. I hope you like it.